Welcome back again. Niecy's back. Tell a friend, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. It has been a long time since I stood in front of this camera today and just talked to you guys today. So I know a few videos back I started a series that's called Singleness, and how God called me to my singleness was my first video. If you have not watched that video, pause. I'll give you a second to go and watch that video first. That's just the bringing it all in of how this series came about for me. And throughout this whole series, I'm gonna break down things that I've been through, what I've been through, how I got to where I am right now, the resources I use, the wisdom that I've gained. There's gonna be so much in store for this series. And I know that I broke it up because I had a bunch of vlogs going on beforehand, but I just want you guys to know I have not forgotten about the series that I planned on starting, and this is the second episode that I'm going to be starting for this series episode, however I want to call it. We'll see. So I'm going to play my intro and then we will get right into this video. So now that you guys have watched my intro, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe on this video. I'm super excited and honored because this is just me being vulnerable and sharing my life, sharing my testimony, sharing my trials and tribulations with you guys. And the Lord placed it on my heart for me to start it as a series. So my series is called A Season of Waiting, but I also talked about how I got called into my singleness. And today I'm going to be talking about letting your work speak for itself. So this series is going to be a bunch of development, a bunch of encouraging, a bunch of knowledge that I've gained throughout this process, and I'm praying and hoping that it helps you. So I got a couple hypothetical questions for you. So the first one I have you ever wondered why people walked out of your life, or why friends left, or why relationships ended, or why you don't receive the love that you give? Short answer to that is because those are unequally yoked relationships. I hope I haven't lost you yet. I'm going to share a scripture with you guys that God had given me, and the Holy Spirit has given me to back this up. So 2 Corinthians 6:14 states, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what does righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" And so when you're unequally yoked with somebody, you can't perform the task at hand because there's an unbalance happening when that person is either holding you down or you're holding somebody down. Because we have to be honest, we ourselves can be the one that's holding somebody back as well. That's when friction happens. That's when the fights happen. That's when all this frustration and tension starts to build up, because there's always an unbalance in this situation. And sometimes pride gets in the way and we don't allow ourselves to be like, well, you know what, maybe I'm the problem in this situation. Nah, it's just the other person. Like, we always put it off on somebody else. Trust me, I've done that before. But the thing is with that is it makes the relationships hard. It makes you understanding your worth and your value, because you're over giving yourself or under giving yourself, and that leads friction and tension, and that leads to what people call toxic. This toxic generation that people are saying is okay. Trust me, toxic behavior is not cute. I'm going to tell you that right now. That does more harm than good. There's so much trauma and pain that is caused with all this toxic behavior that people are talking about. So there's a reason why your feelings get hurt, because we have misplaced people in our lives. And people come into our lives for a lesson, a season, or a lifetime. Everyone is not your friend. Everyone is not your spouse. Every boyfriend that you have is not going to be your husband. Everybody that comes into your life is also not supposed to be held to on a pedestal like a mentor or a leader or somebody that you look up to. Yes, God gives us people in our lives to encourage us and to help us stay on the narrow pathway, but then there's also people that come in and tear you down, that uses you as a building block to build themselves up instead of helping you. So not everyone is meant to be a mentor in your life. Not everyone is meant to be your friends. Everybody has a place in your life, and this is where praying and having a certain level of discernment comes into play. Those relationships that you have are determined by relationship placement. So that's discovered through prayer. That's why I said that prayer is important for going into new relationships, or even your current relationships that you have. My mentor said it best. You're often disappointed or hurt by people because you've misplaced them in your life. So with this example, she showed us a table, and in that table there was examples of different types of relationships and the expectations that you should have with each person in each category. So for example, it says you have friends that have a different expectation than your associates or assignments, and God placed those people in your life for a season or a reason. So there's sometimes you get into relationships or you start friendships thinking, oh my God, this is about to be my best friend. In reality, that's not meant to be your best friend. Maybe in reality there's something that you can gain from that person can gain from you. It's almost like a give and take situation. But sometimes we get overly involved if we have childhood trauma where there's any form of dependency, where there's any form of, you've lacked either that motherly love or that fatherly love, then you're going to look for that in connections. And I've been here before, so I understand this concept a lot. But we have to get to a point where we realize people are placed in certain categories. It's okay to have associates. There's okay to have friends. And it's okay to have people placed in the categories that they are supposed to be placed in, because that alleviates the stress off of you and off of them. So there's a certain level of expectation that you have. Like the expectation I have for my family is different than an associate, or the expectation that I have for somebody that's my best friend is different than a friend, because there's different levels, there's different things that have contributed to the development of that friendship that has moved us to the next level. Okay, and you know what? She's not just my friend anymore, she's my best friend. And sometimes we're quickly pasting people in categories, and then we also have to realize it's okay to take people out of categories too, knock them down a few notches, because sometimes somebody who was your best friend, they was your best friend for maybe years, but then life happens and things happen between both of you and you don't communicate as well, or things are happening and you don't talk as much. It's okay to take that person down and say, all right, you know what, we're friends, because then you're taking the responsibility off. Oh, you're my best friend, you're supposed to be there, I needed you. You're taking that responsibility off, and you realize, you know what, it's okay. It is okay. All right, so now I'm going to switch it over to talking about flipping this about your self-worth, because my topic is let your worth speak for itself. So have you ever heard the saying, you are what you attract? There's truth to that. People say that for a reason. Hurt people hurt people. Broken people break people, because if you only know a certain trauma, if you only know a certain hurt, then that's how you portray your relationships. That's how you treat other people. But honey child, let me tell y'all something. When you receive love, baby, let me tell you, when you experience love, it's just like life's changing, and a lot of bitterness is broken off of love, a lot of fear is broken off with love, and that love hits different. Like when you are loved, it hits different. I can say I experienced love twice in my life. The kind of love that taught me lessons of how I should be treated and how I shouldn't be treated. But those men came into my life for a reason. And when that time was up for them to leave my life, I kept hurting myself, and I kept crying and hurting my own feelings because I wanted to stretch out the time longer. But and that's when the situation became toxic. You know how when a relationship ends, but you feel like, oh my goodness, this can be my husband. Oh my goodness, this could be my wife. Like, I'm going to fight for this, but it starts to get toxic. You start fighting over little things. You start arguing, bickering, and there's a small thing of resentment that starts building up because you're forcing something to be that's not supposed to be. That person or that relationship came into your life to teach you a lesson. And for me, this is an example of somebody coming into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Those relationships taught me a value about myself and how I'm supposed to be treated, but that does not mean that they were meant to be my husband. And it's no hard feelings. The two people that I experienced the love with, there's still love and respect for each other. But it's to the point where, hey, how you doing? We keeping it short, and that's it. It's nothing too much, too volatile, nothing too extra going on now, because there's a mutual respect and understanding. And one thing I had to realize, like, they were not my husband, even though I wanted them to be at the time. Like, that's okay. Like, we misstep sometimes. We get some mistakes here and there, and that's okay. If I knew the things that I knew now, I would have saved myself a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of low confidence, a lot of feeling unworthy and people pleasing, y'all. I have a whole topic that I want to talk about people pleasing, because that's where I was at a point in my life, because there was so much unhealed trauma in my life that those relationships, I clinged on to a lot of people in relationships. Mind you, while they gave me they gave me values and stuff that I take now, and that's a part of me now, I still had a lot of toxic traits going on because I was not healing, honey child. I was just in those relationships like, you're my healer type thing, and that's not the case. No one is ever responsible for your healing. You are responsible for your healing. But I do want to say the beauty of it all is that I learned when God set you apart, you glow differently, and people can read your spirit. There's a confidence about you that repels foolishness. Like when you start getting in that healing journey, there's a confidence that rises up because you're now accepting the love of your Father. You are allowing him to give you all those missing pieces that you felt like you was missing, that you was finding in those other relationships and people that was not for you. But don't get me wrong, people will try and see what they can get by with. I'm going to tell you that. But that's when your discernment allows you to peep their game. I'm telling you, if you have a prayer life and a relationship with God, you pray and take that to God. God will reveal those people's intentions, their ill wills, everything, and you'll be able to place them in categories right where they need to be. No stress, no worry, no doubt. I'm going to tell you that for sure. And then another thing is, for me, I seen the less I talk, the more I see. I gave room for people to show me who they really are. There was no pressure. There was no games. Men that have respected me as a woman have showed me through their actions. And that's another thing where I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to let God, you handle it. Like, for real, I've given God my heart. He has it away in lock and key. So if I go out on a date or I'm texting or entertain somebody, I pray it to the Lord. Lord, show me any intentions behind this guy. If there's something that he is intentional about, let him show me through his actions. And you know, me doing this and me with repetition of me having this single season as well, I stopped wanting people to choose me, and I bonded with those who bonded with me. I took my focus from forcing relationships and cultivating relationships that were growing organically. I also stopped tolerating things and behaviors I shouldn't have. Like all that stuff that people say is toxic, that people like in relationships, it's not good. And I realized that, and I stopped allowing certain behaviors and activities and actions and words to be spoken to me, behaviors to be brought my way, just because of how I started to see myself. Having my Father's love has given me so much more self-respect and love, because the way my Father loves me is the same expectation I have for my husband. And I also stopped lowering my standards. Honey, sis, listen to me. The man that is meant for you, you do not have to lower your standards. If anything, he will meet those expectations and those standards and rise above, to go above and beyond for you. I know that for a fact. And I also started experiencing, like I said before, the matchless love of my Father. I call him Abba now because that's just what he is to me. Like, he is my Father. Abba, like, I pray to him and he just gives me so much peace, so much calmness. I've encountered a Father's love that I searched for years. Like, this changed the trajectory of how I viewed myself. Like, once I encountered this type of love, it changed my whole outlook on love, with my family, with my friends, with my future spouse, with my relationships. And I began to understand the identity that God gave me. I let those who wanted to love me in friendships and in family. I understood my value in their lives, and I began to see myself how my Father sees me, worthy of love, operating in fruits of the Spirit and abundance. And now that radiates off me. When I tell y'all, I can feel the glory of God radiating off of me that repels literally foolishness, guys with hidden agendas, even friendships, because it's not just about men, it's friendships too that have stopped or that hadn't gone past a certain point, because that begins to radiate off of me. My focus now is developing my relationships instead of forcing them. So the relationships I do have, it's very important for me to be intentional about these relationships, about these friendships, because I'm like, yo, you mean a lot to me. So I need to take more initiative to show you that you mean more to me. With doing this and focusing on all the stuff that I've been through in my life, this has just changed my life tremendously. I automatically demand respect without opening my mouth, because I love and respect myself. There's so much I've come to realize there's so much that can be said without even opening your mouth first. And I still remain my loving self. I don't love to get love back. I've learned that. Like I've learned, that's one thing that I've learned, that I'm remaining my loving self. Like if you know me, I am a very loving and compassionate person. But before I even allow myself to truly exercise or be in that grace that I have to love people, I used to always tell people, oh, you take advantage of me, I'm taking advantage of you. Oh, you think you got an attitude? I'm gonna show you my attitude. Like I threw that all away, and I realized how miserable I was. But when I stepped back into that, and I was like, you know what, this is who I am. This is what makes me more comfortable. This makes me feel and show love. I'm going to operate in this. When I started to do that, I started to understand that you love people without expectancy of receiving that love back. And when I tell you I love because my Father says love, in my obedience, I've received so much more love than I've ever received forcing people to love me. I've received so much love. When I love, not in expectancy to receive it back or to want it back or desiring something in exchange, I've received so much love. When it comes to my job, when it comes to my finances, when it comes to my relationships, when it comes to my friendships, like I've experienced love on a whole new level. And y'all, it is the best thing that has ever happened to me. And I'm going to tell you right now, I like those odds. I'm not the type of person anymore that's going to be like, oh, I'm holding this bitterness in. Oh, I loved you, but I didn't get this love back in return. Listen to me. I'm going to love the way that I desire to be loved. And that love is going to be returned back to me because I'm giving it freely. I can tell you I love you. You can be like, yeah, I hate you. I love you. You are beautiful. You are worthy, because that's the type of person that I am. And I've learned to bask in that and understand that and love that, to love that aspect about myself. So y'all, this all ties back into letting your worth speak for itself. This is something that happens when you allow your worth to speak for itself. I know that I gave a mouthful, but it's always building blocks to the bigger picture, to the bigger point, and that's allowing your worth to speak for itself. The more you love, the more you set those necessary boundaries, the more you don't allow people to disrespect you because you respect yourself enough, the more your worth is gonna speak for itself. And that is a form of wealth too. Having that worthiness is a form of wealth. Wealth isn't always just about money, but also understanding that a wealth of love is just as powerful as anything monetary, because that's where your healing, that's where your peace, that's where your safety, that's where your protection is. So I just wanted to just come on and just talk about letting your worth speak for itself. I've had a few encounters recently where people have told me, they're like, Janice, you know that you have this like, what's the word I'm looking at? Like persona of like, don't step to me if you're not about what you are about to say out of your mouth. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, cause I didn't realize that was a thing. I was just being my loving self. But when somebody told me, it's like, oh yeah, we were in the store and this guy was looking at you, but you could tell you had like this demeanor, like, don't approach me. Not saying that I was like masculine, but I'm very feminine about it. But it was like, they can tell that the way that person was looking at me, like they wanted to say something, but then they also did not say nothing, because they're like, well, I don't know what they said, but you can tell that they were just like, nah, I can't step to it if my words don't match it up. Somebody actually told me that too. I was texting somebody, and he was like, you know what, I stopped texting you because he was like, I wasn't ready to step up to the responsibility of what it takes to, not what it takes to love you, but to be the man that you deserve. And I'm just like, well, thank you for sparing me that heartbreaker relationship. Or, you know, when people are like, oh, well, why don't they like me? Thank you for sparing me that, because even with him saying it, I also got that level of discernment from my father too, not to get in a relationship with this person, you know, keep it to a minimum, things like that. So when I tell you, the more that you operate out of love, the more you're able to receive love and give love, and also just the understanding of allowing your worth to speak for itself. So I love you guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your girl has a bunch of vlogs and stuff too, so go ahead and like those. And if you haven't seen the first video with me talking about how I stepped into my single season, and my series is called The Season of Waiting. You need to do it. Go ahead and watch it because I'm coming back for more. I love you guys. Until next time, Nisi out. Peace.